What is financial freedom? You don't have to wait to be financially free. You can have it at the speed of thought. Don't go out there and risk your money and your mindset and your wealth in some faulty financial model. Financial freedom is a place of money not being the primary reason or excuse for doing or not doing something. Look, it's still a consideration. It's just not the consideration. So let me say it again. It's a state of mind, of being. It's a perspective. Most people aren't financially free because, well, they chase net worth. They get taught to live in scarcity. They don't increase their financial knowledge. And they get stuck in what I would call their shadow money persona. We all have a money persona. On the shadow side, born of scarcity is one of isolation. It's one of hold on to what you got, take what you can while you can, overly competitive, but usually about reducing our life to minimize expenses instead of being more productive. Now, there's a winning persona, but you have to know how to unlock it and live it. And when you do, there's more abundance, there's more prosperity, there's a different viewpoint. And if you stay stuck in the shadow, well, you're going to be isolated, overworked. You probably buy into the sacred cows, the money myths that don't serve you. You might even confuse price with value. When people only look for the cheapest thing, look, I once went, this is a one-time thing. I went to a Black Friday sale way back in the day with my wife. It was like 2008. Economy's kind of melting down. We're struggling. She's like, let's go to this Black Friday thing. She set an alarm for 3 a.m. I didn't know 3 a.m. existed. That was pretty damn early. And we go, and I buy some, like, this is a while back. It was like a CD player, Westinghouse at Walmart. Yeah, and it was like $20, and it worked for 20 days. So, sure, low price, but high cost. There wasn't value there. If you get stuck in a budgeting mindset, and there's so many financial people that will just tell you that it's all about budgeting. Budgeting is about how to cut back, how to eliminate, how to reduce. You don't shrink your way to wealth. So if you get peddled into this thought process, it's about scrimping and sacrificing and delaying and deferring and then just funding retirement plan and waiting for 30 years, hoping for the best and then wish that it pays off, just pay off loans and have inflation kind of hurt you because of that. Now, there's loans that make sense to pay off and ones that might not. But the key here is you are your greatest asset. Not a stock, not a bond, not a budget, not a piece of real estate. It's your ability to have a fulfilled life, an enjoyable life, a perspective of abundance. It's your ability to enjoy the moments along the way. Wealth is an emotion. If you don't have fulfillment and happiness, net worth won't save you. It'll actually cost you. Chasing net worth might be at odds with creating financial freedom. It's about a number on a piece of paper. And even when you get there, inflation makes it where it's not quite what you thought it was going to be, and someone else has more. So you keep upping the ante, and that net worth, if it doesn't translate to cash flow, if it doesn't translate to quality of life, it's not worth that much at all. Let's look at this. There's a huge advantage to financial independence. This is where there's fast money. This is where money builds momentum. We hear about the world of a 10x advantage. Some people think to get there, you have to work 10 times harder. That's not the case. You have to have a different framework. When you have these frameworks, life gets better. So let's look at the first framework most people get stuck in. The framework that most people have when it comes to money, when it comes to wealth, is a notion of it takes money to make money. You've heard it. You may have said it before. I have. It takes money to make money. I mean, sure, you make money on your money, but to really make money, it takes relationships and ideas, value and exchange. But in the faulty model, in the limited framework, it's a belief of you got to put away money. Then they tell you, well, high risk equals high return. So if you want a good return, take a bunch of risk. It's really risky to invest in things you know nothing about. It's even riskier to invest in things that destroy your mindset or eliminate peace of mind or create stress because now you're not going to be as productive worrying about what's going to happen and it's probably outside of your control. And then they tell you, hey, you know what it is? It's time. How long can you wait? The best things come to those who wait. It's not actually how it works in money. This faulty framework of accumulation mindset, set it and forget it, budget, set money aside, wait for long periods of time, take a bunch of risk, deal with the volatility. Oh, well, that's problematic, and it has absolutely failed people. There's a different framework, a framework of velocity. The velocity says in business, or like in the economy, it's GDP, or gross domestic product. It's our output divided by the money supply. So how does velocity increase? Well, we have to keep the money supply the same, because remember long division, if we put a bigger number in the denominator, it doesn't equal a bigger number. It actually lowers things. So we don't have to add input. We just have to add output. How do we do that? Well, one way is to budget, right? That's one way that you could do it. If you budget, that's the cutout method. And if you spend more money than you make, budgeting might be a good plan, might be a good idea. I'm not telling you to just spend everything that comes in. There's a different process called mindful cash management. We'll talk about that here in a bit. But the second way we increase velocity is efficiency. Keep more of what you make without cutting back. First way you do that is save money from the IRS. Don't overpay your interest. Find in your investments hidden fees and commissions that create drag and eliminate return. And find better design with your insurance so you insure only the catastrophic things, the things that would derail or harm you, not the inconsequential things that you could pay cash for today and go to sleep tonight. Now, the third way that we can increase velocity is expand. If you can expand, that's the game. What's expansion? That's a game of value creation. So I'll say it this way. Exchange creates wealth. The more times a dollar exchanges hands, if you went and bought this book, Money Unmasked, it's $24.95 retail, probably get it for less than that. Well, you're saying that the book's worth more than the $20. And I'm saying it's worth less because I wrote it. I know what's in this. So you could take what it cost me millions of dollars to figure out and actually improve your life. And we could both win. We both end up wealthier because wealth is built through unequal exchange. Both parties can win because of unequal exchange. If we had all the same abilities in this world, if we all had the same insights and we knew all the same strategies, there's not really incentive to exchange. But if someone can produce something that I don't know how to produce, like I don't know how to create this microphone, I don't know how to have the sound come through these headphones, but someone else did. But I understand how to find money that's being lost and slipping through the cracks and plug those leaks so people keep way more of what they make. So I can bring something that someone else doesn't understand and improve their life, and they could then bring their brilliance to improve my life. We both end up wealthier. See, in the world of the finite pie belief is this. There's only so much to go around. And if one person takes a piece, that's less pie for the rest of us. But money and pie are definitely not the same thing. Even if there was a limited amount of money, now they're adding to computer screens as I say these words. There's an unlimited number of times it can exchange hands. We could use it to buy computers and clothes and food and shelter or entertainment like comedy and concerts. So the more times money exchanges hands, the more value is created. So that's this game of velocity. In your world, it's your output. That's your GDP divided by your inputs. So you can, reduce the amount of input by just spending less to increase your output. That's the budgeting methodology. Or we plug financial leaks and become more efficient. And we did this study. We just said, what happens in the book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? We said, what happens if someone doubled the return on their 401k? Which, how to do that, that's another question. But what if they double the return on an average retirement account, like a $120,000 account, double the return, versus plugging the financial leaks? What if we went into the financial leaks and said, let's especially save on tax and save on interest? What we found was a 400% advantage plugging financial leaks over taking more risk, chasing a return, even if that return came true. Now, it's not an either or. It's just a different frame. It's a different consideration. In the world of velocity, we're looking at how do we increase your output without increasing your risk, without asking you to take more time, without asking you to take, more money to be put into the plan. I used to drive this 75 Chevy pickup truck. It was brown, a Silverado. I love that thing, stick shift. My dad gave it to me. I buffed it out, cleaned it up, spent a whole summer kind of doing what I could do. I love that truck. I'm from a small town. I love driving that thing. I want my girlfriend to sit next to me, had a gun rack in the back. Yeah. You know, I might look a little hippie now with this long hair, but I come from a small town. I go hunting. And the reality was, at one time, the carburetor got stuck and it was just spewing gas. And so I was getting gallons to the mile instead of miles to the gallon. Now, I could have just put more gas in that truck to go further, or I could plug the gas leak. And by doing that, I got all the way up to 9 miles per gallon. Now, that's not great, but on an old Chevy truck, that's what it was, right? So that's what I'm talking about is I'm plugging financial leaks, finding where money's slipping through the cracks and going to Wall Street, going to financial institutions, and instead keeping more of the money that you make. Expansion is the ultimate game, though. Expansion is where you unlock being a value creator, but it comes from a mindset. A mindset not of scarcity and elimination, but one of abundance and production. Production and then keeping more of that production by being efficient with it. It's a completely different model. It's a different framework. And when you have the right framework, you get further faster. So let's show this. Imagine that you've been taught your whole life to save 10% of your income. If you could save that 10% and you could put it in a retirement plan, you know, and try to earn a 10% return because the stock market's averaged 10% since 2000 BC. I mean, I'm sure you've heard all these averages and that kind of stuff. The reality is that might not quite be true what the return is, especially just for inflation, but let's just give it that and wait for 30 years because compound interest takes 30 years to work. The first 10 years of compound interest, reinvesting your money doesn't grow that fast. The second 10 years gets a little bit better. It's the third 10 years where you get that exponential curve and you really start seeing it pay off. Well, that's that long haul, long term, don't know if it's working, hope that it's working. What if you have more volatility? What if there's more losses? What if there was fees? Because even if you have $100,000 and you could get that 10% over 30 years, you would have a whopping $1,740,000. That's pretty amazing. That's pretty awesome. But if you had inefficiencies, if you had fees in that plan that ate away just a little bit less than 1%, that same $100,000 grows to $1,300,000. That's a pretty big difference. That's a pretty big difference of money that would have been in your pocket but was lost to fees. So that's just one example of efficiency is we don't want non-performing fees or commissions that aren't helping you in an advantage. Let's look at a different model, though. Instead of a 30-year model, I'm going to talk about the financial independence framework. So this framework is 5 levers. When I say levers, it's basically saying leverage, but I'm not talking about leveraging money. I'm talking about leveraging knowledge. Let me kind of explain that. We all have mental capital. It's our ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insights, strategies. It's our tools. Now, if we keep that to ourselves, we're not going to make money. But if we take that and we bridge that by serving others or relationship capital, people, networks, organizations, mentors, friends, the byproduct is financial capital. So if you have a money problem or think you have a money problem, that's a symptom. The real issue is either the wrong knowledge or not sharing enough of that knowledge to have the money in your pocket. The more we leverage our mental and relationship capital, the more financial capital we create. But let's look at your financial framework. If it's an accumulation and it takes 30 years for a compound interest to work, there's a way to get there in 10 years or less, where you have financial independence. Now, I say 10 years or less. I've had 2 of the most intense individuals get there in like 90 days. They had the resources, but they had the wrong recipe. And they're people that are kind of extraordinary, like winning Ironman races and, you know, winning bodybuilding competitions and concert pianists. Like they're just so disciplined and committed and ridiculous. But I've seen people that are deeply in debt, struggling massively, and still get there in 7 years. So it really depends on who you are and your level of commitment. But here's what it looks like. The first piece of the 5 I've already alluded to, but it's plug your financial leaks. When you plug your financial leaks, there's more money to put back into the plan that's rightfully yours. You just have the financial savvy and eyes to see it. The second is to engineer wealth. What I mean by engineering wealth is we have to figure out what's your monthly expense. What are your expenses? And then we want to reverse engineer and say, how much would you have to have every single month to cover those expenses from assets? Financial independence is assets that create cash flow, right? And those assets could be a business, it could be real estate, it could be stocks that have dividends, it could be loans that you lend to other people on real estate and get the interest. There's so many different ways to do it. But we start by plugging leaks, and then we say, what's the rest that we need to get to that place? And we start with building the foundation so everything's coordinated and working together. When that foundation's handled, then we say, what's your investor DNA? What kind of investments are you going to focus on so you don't get derailed, distracted, or overly diversified? When you're overly diversified, you don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work, and it's really a strategy of preservation more than it is of growth. Diversification makes sense in the right context. The wrong context, it doesn't make sense, because at one time when I was in my 20s, I had 2 IPOs that I invested in. I had an oil and gas thing I invested in, a hard money lending fund, lending on real estate. I owned over 100 real estate properties. I just was like, and by the way, crap for my wife, because I'm just constantly working on all of these assets that I'm acquiring that I don't even enjoy being part of, just because I want to be financially free, thinking that financial freedom was financial independence. And it's 2 different things. Financial freedom is a state of mind. Like I said, money's not your primary reason or excuse for doing or not doing something. It's a consideration. It's just no longer the consideration. Where financial independence is a state of having enough cash flow from assets to cover your expenses. I'll show you why that's a 10 times advantage here in a bit. The third thing is we have to find your lazy assets and we have to turn them into cash flow. What assets aren't creating cash flow right now? Even if it's a retirement plan, that you go, well, I can't touch that till I'm 59 and a half. You can do what's called a 72T, and you can start taking equal distributions between now and age 59 and a half for a minimum of 5 years, whichever's greater. So, you've just unlocked an asset to help you create financial independence and to improve your velocity. When we think accumulation, we think one-dimensional. Reinvest into one type of asset, one type of account. In velocity, this is how I used velocity the first time. Basically, the first dollars I earned, I put into cash value life insurance, specifically properly structured whole life policies. Then I took the cash value and I made a down payment and I bought some real estate. I then took the cash flow from the real estate, which was my renters, and I put those renter dollars back into my cash value. As that cash value grew, then I bought more real estate. And again, I just kept doing that and let the cash value replenish from the renters, creating velocity. So my dollar's doing more than one thing. That's one example. So you want to turn lazy assets into cash flow. The fourth thing, man, this made the biggest difference for me, and it relates to this third thing here, where I'm saying, hey, you really want to expand? This next thing is scale revenue. As a business owner myself, and if you're a business owner, you can scale revenue. Maybe it's hiring the right person, and it helps you to grow. Maybe it's adding processes and procedures that are automated and using technology and AI to become more effective in what you do. It's building infrastructure. It's increasing your marketing. It's having more value per client and saying, what is it, by serving them, what do they want? There's ways to scale that revenue, especially small businesses can grow 50% in a year some years by making a few important choices, having some great hires. When I wrote a book, that scaled my revenue. I went from a regional financial guy to a national financial guy. I went from speaking for free to getting paid to speak. All of a sudden, I had this thing called the 401k hoax where people could read Killing Sacred Cows. They could apply for this, where I'd say, I'll double the performance of your 401k on the money that you give me to help you build this and plug financial leaks and create financial independence, or I'll give you all your money back plus double what you would have got on the money you gave me in your 401k. And we crushed it because, it was 2009. It kind of helped. The market was down, but we would have done well even if the market had the best year ever, because it was about scaling revenue. And then the fifth thing is to make it count. And this make it count has everything to do with financial freedom, because make it count means you design a life that you love. You build the life you don't want to retire from, even if you can. Make it count is you invest back into yourself. You enjoy your life along the way so you don't burn yourself out. Take a few trips. Do some things that you really enjoy. Don't say, when I'm 65, I'm going to do those things. Do those along the way so you're relaxed, rejuvenated, and refreshed, and back into being a value creator. This is how we create financial independence, and this is why it's a 10 times advantage. If you're taking 10% of your income to try to get that 10% return, and you have to wait for 30 years, you'll find out pretty late if it works. And if you're 20 years in and you're not on track, you've lost one of the most important things, which is time value of money. That 10 years, the new deposits aren't getting enough return to get you where you want to go. So what if instead you just simply plugged financial leaks and reinvested it into cash flowing investments? Okay? And when you create financial independence, then you have enough assets to cover expenses. When those assets will cover your expenses, think about this. Rather than saving 10% of your income, you can save 100% of your income to buy more assets, because your lifestyle is being covered by the recurring revenue and the cash flow from your assets. That is an ultimate advantage. That creates exponential return. But the way all of this works isn't just the framework. It's the frame of mind. It's the money mindset. So if you become financially independent, you have a 10x advantage. So ask yourself, how can you most quickly create cash flow? For some, here, I'll show you. This is a great way for some people. You got to know your cash flow index. If you have a loan, let's look at the loans portion of this. You just simply take the loan balance, right? And you divide it by the monthly payment. That'll tell you your cash flow index. Now, if your cash flow index is less than 50, that's a cash hog. That's a pig. It's just requiring way too much cash every single month for a low amount that you've borrowed. It might mean that you have high interest rates. It might mean that it's close to being paid off. That's not a good number. Let's say it's between 50 and 100. We want to reposition. We want to renegotiate. Or we want to reallocate. Do you have other funds? Do you have other funds that you could cash out that pay off a higher interest rate loan than you're earning a lower interest rate? Reposition, probably better to say, just refinance. You might have a paid off car. You could refinance that paid off car and pay off a higher interest rate loan. All of a sudden, the cash flow index improves. You might have a mortgage. You get a line of credit on that mortgage and pay off something. It's now tax deductible versus non-tax deductible with a lower interest rate because there's collateral there. So if anything is greater than 100, that is what I would call an efficient loan. That's good news, right? So you only want to pay extra to the one with the lowest cash flow index and pay the minimum to everything else. Now let's look at a different cash flow index. Let's look at your investment cash flow index. The loan is you've borrowed money. The investment is you've allocated money. So you want to take your deposit. How much did you allocate towards the investment? Multiply that by the monthly cash flow. That's going to give you a number. Now here's the deal. If that number is greater than 100, that's a low performing asset. It's not creating much cash flow because now it's like you're the bank versus borrowing from the bank. It's your money. If it's between 50 and 100, that's okay. That's not bad. That's kind of medium. Is there a way to improve it? But what we're really looking for is we want something less than 50. Less than 50 is great cash flow. Great cash flow. So if you find that you have really low cash flow index on your loans, but really high cash flow index on your investments, it might make sense to pay those off because you're going to be more efficient. It's going to lower the bar of what it takes to get economically independent by paying those off. If you're a great investor, knowledgeable, you know your investor DNA, and you're creating great cash flow, it might make sense to invest more. And when those investments grow, you can then pay those loans off if it's something you want to pay off. If it's a loan that's attached to an asset, maybe you don't want to pay it off. There's a lot of real estate investors out there that love that leverage, but you got to make sure you have liquidity. You know what you're doing. Otherwise, that leverage can eat you up. If you don't have a tenant, if you have an issue that you have to do maintenance on that property, it might cut into that cash flow so much or require other cash flow that it's no longer a good investment. This is why you have to become a great investor. So maybe pay off a loan, maybe unlock lazy assets, Maybe even before that, it comes down to healing your relationship with money. Transform your money story. Like, I know people that they hit certain thermometers, right? When we have a thermometer, if that's set at 70, well, that's what the temperature is going to be. It's not going to go up to 75. And if we have a money ceiling or thermometer, it's going to be hard to break through. And maybe it's because we heard money was the root of all evil. Or maybe we heard that people that have money are greedy. Or maybe we heard, oh yeah, they do something wrong, or deception, or greedy. Those billionaires are ruining people's lives. You've heard these sentiments and statements before, maybe even said them, and then it corrupts our own vision of money. Money is just a byproduct of value. Is value good or bad? If you add value to people, is that good? I mean, when I add value, I feel good. When people get value, their lives are better. So if money is just a measure of value, then we start thinking that it's bad, then it's going to decrease our ability to create value. And if we decrease our ability to create value, it's because there's something in our mind that's limiting our value. We have a belief system that no longer serves us. Think about it. What'd your family feel about money? What'd your parents or grandparents or cousins or friends say about the rich? Dirty, filthy, stinking rich. They have more than their fair share. How do they feel about wealthy? How do they feel about people that have more than them? Do they think it was luck? Do they think it was deception? Could there be beliefs that you have that no longer serve you? Childhood memories that haunt or dictate your actions? I mean, I remember my mom saying, we're getting killed by these bills, getting killed by these insurance companies. And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, oh, all of our money goes out to that. Now, not all of our money went out, but it felt like that to her. And I started to think about that. I was like, that doesn't sound good. I don't want that. And I had other people that said, man, if I only had the money, we can't afford that. Like, you start to think about these memes and cliches and statements that circulate in our mind. And there's these different layers. Like, if we look at our money stories, there's these 3 layers of our money story. The first is very surface, and it's our protective layer. Our protective layer is what we tell others. Oh, I don't need a nice car. I don't care about homes. No, these clothes are fine. Like, what is it that we're saying? We're only saying it. If we really didn't care, we wouldn't bring it up. We bring it up because it's an excuse. We wish we had more. We don't have it, so we say it's not important to us. Like, if you say money's not important, you're probably not going to have a lot of it. I'm not big on having things that aren't important to me. I think of money like air. When it's around and there's plenty of it, I don't worry about it. But, I'm at 7,000 feet here. Sometimes when I work out, I'm like, you start to feel like it's a little scarce. It's hard to breathe. The same thing happens with money. When there's an abundance and you feel like you have plenty, you're going to operate differently. You're going to think differently. But there was a survey recently that Northwestern Mutual did, and they said, look, there's all these millionaires that don't feel wealthy. Millionaires that don't feel wealthy. Like, most millionaires don't feel wealthy because wealth is an emotion. Wealth is a mindset. Prosperity, it's a state of being. So what beliefs no longer serve you? What would you have to let go of to grow? So you might be one idea or one relationship away from a new level of prosperity. One new piece of mental capital, and you're like, wow, I feel lighter. That unlocks me. One person that you co-create with that introduces you to something, that teaches you something, that breaks you free, that refers you, that introduces you to something. One idea or one relationship away. And by the way, if you think you have a problem, like my buddy Keith, we were going into my hot tub and we were going to cold plunge before, and the person, the contractor for the backyard had unplugged one of the plugs, not the other. So it looked like it was like the water was hot. I was like, did this burn the engine? There was a bunch of dust in there. I was like, man, I think that might have been broken. He goes, well, worry about it. You always taught me if you got the money to solve it, it's not really a problem. It's like, that's true. Now we just cleaned it out. It worked, which was nice. But, this is why it's nice to have money. If you can add value, people will pay you in exchange for that value. And then you can buy a better quality of life. You could buy more convenience. You can have more peace of mind. What would you achieve if you knew you couldn't fail? I mean, what would you do if you had an unlimited bank account? What would you stop doing that you're doing right now? Whatever it is that you want, whatever that is important to you, this is the accelerator formula. Accelerator formula begins with co-creation. Who can support and inspire you? Who can help guide you? Is it a mentor that asks you better questions? Is it a coach that tells you specifically what to do? My whole life, I've had trouble with food. I just ate too much of it. I went up and down in weight. There's a time where, 2008, I was so stressed. I gained a bunch of weight because of that stress. I ate my emotions. And then I hired this guy, Alan. My buddy Dan Martell introduced me to him. He's like, do this 16-day cleanse. Boom. Exactly what he said was going to happen happened. It was a formula. He says, okay, now we're going to focus on macros and you're going to do this type of workout. And now it's like I'm eating all day long and not gaining weight because I'm eating the right foods. I'm no longer craving all the stuff that was bad for me. There was a formula there. I found a co-creator that brought new mental capital to me. And all of a sudden, I got fitter. And guess what? Physical fitness and fiscal fitness, there are formulas. There are ways to do it. Anything you want to accelerate, find a co-creator. Now, this is where the mindset comes in. The second step is we have to eliminate. Some of this is our belief systems that don't serve us anymore. Like if you think about it, what about success are you afraid of? What about success scares you? That people might treat you different, you might lose relationships, that you might not be able to sustain it, that you don't deserve it and not worthy of it, that you don't know what to do about it. Like there's all these belief systems that we might have subconsciously running and preventing us from being where we want to be. This is that first layer of the money story of protecting us. We say these things to push away. The things we have to eliminate, busy work, maybe too much TV, maybe too much watching of sports, maybe, I don't know, like what is your escapism? Is it you go and organize things in the house rather than do the work that matters? What is it? Is it, I need to go do this thing that I've been putting off. Like what is it that sabotages your results and success? We've got to eliminate those and identify it, because if we do, we'll find the time. Then as there's profitability, as there's momentum, we can delegate. People that don't learn to delegate hit a ceiling. They hit burnout. They think they have to work harder than everybody else, but it's not the most strategic, important work to do, because if you're not good at it and you procrastinate and it drains your energy, it drains your wealth. Finally, it's about collaboration. When you find people that do what you don't do, that you can count on, and that you bring together as a team, co-creator is one person, collaboration is a team, this is how we accelerate results. So in the financial world, people have to have a coach, a co-creator, a mentor. Get to what you really want. What is the perspective you have, and how do we identify and eliminate those? When people come to my cash cabin right here at this table, we focus heavily on their money story, their money beliefs. It's most half of the day, and I watch so many people grow exponentially after they identify and eliminate this, and these are blind spots. They don't see them. They just think it's reality, and it's how they live their life. But we go back and we find out their first memory of money. And we find out what happened to them at a certain time where they maybe gained something and lost it. Or, it's crazy, all the stories I hear. And it's when they're a kid, before their brain's fully developed. And yet they tuck it away like a paradox. I don't ever want to feel this way. So anything that reminds me of this ever, I'm going to prevent it from happening. But it's maybe the very prosperity that they want and deserve. But they don't realize they made a choice as a kid. And they don't want to break that promise when they're a kid, not even remember what the promise was. But anything that feels that way starts to sabotage it. Man, if we could eliminate that, those misbeliefs, those containers that don't serve us anymore, and expand the context and the opportunity, it's a game changer. Well, the second part of the money story is a different layer of protection that we tell ourselves. Is things we never speak out loud. Maybe it's because you're married. You don't want your spouse to feel like you failed. Maybe you always promised stability and security and that you would take care of them. And when you dated, maybe it was romantic and fun and you're always having a good time and you could be present. Now that you're married, you're like, I got to provide. We have kids. I got to provide. We've got bills. We've got a house. We got all these dreams. And it's like people get into isolation. They don't share with the very person that they spend the most time with because they don't want to disappoint them. But they could feel it. They could sense something's going on. They don't know what it is. They might be thinking it's a lot worse. And then the solution in that isolated place is I'll work harder, I'll do more. And they're like, why? I don't ever get to see you. I'm going to be with you. And they're like, I could provide you any life you want. I have a friend, Jason. He's like, I always told my wife, you can go on any trip you want. I just have to work 7 days a week, so I can't go with you. She's like, that's not the life I signed up for. Isolation is a problem. And the stories that we tell ourselves, these are stories that we don't speak out loud because of guilt, shame, embarrassment, concern. These are the things, the words that we tell ourselves that if we don't speak out loud, they hold us in the prison of our own mind. Who can you trust? Who can you talk to? Every amazing athlete has a coach. And even if they could beat them at the very game they're playing, they still coach them because it's outside perspective with less attachment. When you can speak these stories out loud, you can heal. You can let go. You can be free. In 2008, I've got Killing Sacred Cows. The book is coming out. It's going to hit New York Times. It does hit New York Times. I hit the Inc. 500 with my business, with my financial firm, and I lost $200,000 in a real estate deal the same week. I did not celebrate. I was ashamed. I wanted to go tell my wife about it, but was scared what she would think, that we lost this couple $100,000. And you know what she thought? Let's have a party that you made the New York Times. What did you learn from it? Nobody is Midas. We don't just everything works. What we do is we learn lessons through action. But if we let those mistakes become our identity, our money story holds us back from ever making money. Now, if we start to proclaim these, we start to talk about this, we start to admit this, we get to this place I call the basement. In the basement's what we can't share. It's what we can't express. It's what we can't tell anyone because we don't know what's holding us back. It's our ultimate blind spot. And we don't get to the blind spot and the sludge until we identify out loud to people we trust the stories that we're telling ourselves. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. What does it say about me? I'm an idiot. I'm not valuable. All these kind of things. If we can identify those and speak those out loud, they don't hold us captive any longer, and we can get to the real work underneath. I believed from the time I was a kid. I was in kindergarten, Miss Ashcroft's class, and we made this little milk carton project. I made my favorite little milk carton because it was a chocolate milk carton. My house colors were almost identical to this chocolate milk carton. Cut it out, made it into a beautiful little home. She put it on the shelf like everybody else in the class and said, you know what? Go home and memorize your address, and when you do, I'll give it back. Well, I forgot about it. So the next day, all the girls remembered. They got all their milk cartons back. Half the guys were like me. They fucked off, and they didn't get it done. And then I was like, all right, I better remember it. Forgot again. And then it's the last day. It's just me and one other kid, Johnny. It's our little milk cartons up there. He goes first, gets it, and now it's me. The whole class is looking. And I'm 326 Denver Ave. And I mix those numbers up, and I forget the avenue. And she threw the milk carton away. That was the rules. But in that moment, with the class looking at me and me freezing up, I told myself a story. I told myself a story that I kept to myself for 20 years from then. And my story was, I am stupid. I'm stupid. I had no freedom. Everything in my life was, I'll work harder. I'll get there. I'm going to prove. If I have enough money, I'll prove to everyone I'm not stupid. Sure, it was motivating initially, but it leads to bitterness and anger. It leads to a feeling of lack and scarcity and of comparison and jealousy and all of that kind of stuff because I held it to myself. But I actually got up on a stage and spoke out those words. It took me 30 minutes to do it. It was emotional as hell, and I started to gain freedom. I started to see that I had this other fear and worry that I learned from my family, that was loving, but they were worried about, hey, you got to hold on to what you got. You got to reduce your expenses. You never know what could go away. You never know when water's going to be $15. Well, I went to LA airport. It was $15. They were right. But you know what they were wrong about? Scarcity, fear, worry. Larry Moss, my acting coach, always says worry is the most terrible use of the imagination. And there I was, stuck in that story until I spoke it out loud. And then I saw underneath. I wanted to be loved. I didn't want to disappoint my family. All these things that was driving me, but never allowing me to be wealthy. Why? Because I was never present. It was always about earning something, getting somewhere, never enjoying today. So, what's your money story? If you don't like the results that you have, if you look around and say, why are they more successful than me? I'm smarter than them. Why not me? Well, might be right there in your money story. Wealth is built through the conversations we have, the language we use. Is the language of poverty or prosperity? A language of possibility or fear? We speak our vision into existence. A big building that you see, a beautiful piece of art, it's a different conversation. Someone inspired someone to do something and they did it. If that comes from a place of holding on to what we got, being afraid we're going to lose it, it could go away at any time, money's bad, wrong, evil, someone else has it and they didn't deserve it and they stole it and all this kind of stuff, that doesn't serve you, it doesn't serve us. I mean, think of all the language that we've dedicated to money that's not empowering. I wrote this money rap. You know, I'm 46 and white. I thought, let's give the people what they want. They want to hear me rap. And I'll just give you a little piece of it. Money. Money walks, money talks. Money is evil, but money makes the world go around. Money doesn't grow on trees, but it takes money to make money. There's easy money, even money, smart money, dumb money, old money, new money, mad money, funny money. Short money, long money, hush money, loud money. You beyond the money, in the money, even made of money because money makes the man. You roll in the money, rake in the money, run for the money, or take the money and run. Throw money at it, throw money around, even throw good money after bad. Money's no object. If you're a money machine with money to burn, just pour money down the drain. But for the love of money, hope you get your money grubbing hands worth. See, like this is just a small piece of it, but like we could just go, how many statements do we hear? Dirty, filthy, stinking. Money's the root of all evil. You know, like you can't roll with me if you don't have money. Like there's so many statements about money that are negative. And if we start to buy into the rhetoric, if we start to buy into the hype, or we start to believe that to justify where we're at, we'll never have financial freedom. So what can you do about this? Well, we go to identifying what money is, what prosperity is. Prosperity is not a state of having, it's a state of being. There's people with a lot of money that are worried about losing it tomorrow, just barely holding it together, scared that someone's going to sue them, whatever it is. It's not prosperity. And just having money doesn't make you prosperous. Look at the people in Mexico. There was a Mexican peso crisis. I remember I was in college. I was in high school, actually, because it was in 1994, I think. Mexico's central bank announced a sudden devaluation of the peso. It was like 15% devalued. People panicked, investors, right? It led to a massive capital flight from Mexico. People just got rid of the peso. And the peso's value collapsed by over 50% within weeks. Their foreign reserves were nearly depleted as the government tried to defend the peso. Even worse, I have a $1 billion bill from Zimbabwe. I'm a billionaire in Zimbabwe, but guess what? So was everybody else because of hyperinflation. Back in 2007 to 2008, they had such excessive money printing, right? Because they had to finance these fiscal deficits and support a bunch of government spending. Inflation peaked at an estimated 80.9 sextillion% in November 2008. It's not just money. Money is a byproduct of value. Wealth is an emotion. That emotion is happiness, fulfillment, peace of mind, being present. And yet everybody's teaching you that wealth is a game of outwork, out hustle, wait longer, one day, someday, all that kind of stuff. And what it does is it actually robs us of our wealth. If it's net worth and it's dots on a piece of paper, that never translates to quality of life. You can go read the book. I'm going to save you the time. I'm going to save you the money. The Millionaire Next Door. This was like my first Bible of finance. I read it and I was like, cool. If I never spend any of the money I make, I can become a broke, miserable millionaire with money and about nothing else. If I wear the same clothes for the next 40 years, I buy the same beater truck, and I just never spend, there is some nice message about frugality in there and anti-consumerism, but there's a lot about never talking about it at the dinner table, acting like you don't have it, even if you do. Well, guess what? Your heirs are never going to understand that you had money. They're going to blow it as soon as you die. And if you have it but never utilize it, what good was it? It's a trophy in a case, not the actual action on the field. So, what is scarcity? That's the second piece here. I think the first form of scarcity is playing not to lose. Playing not to lose is, holding on to what you got, only thinking about the past, being afraid of the future. I had an aunt that was this way. She had toilet paper before it was popular, a whole garage full. I think she had the first dollar she ever earned. She applied for welfare even though she had $550,000 in a savings account in the credit union that was walking distance from her house. When she died, her house was worth like $20,000. She played not to lose, and she lost. So much that she had an issue with her siblings and never spoke to them again, accusing them of stealing her money when they were trying to help and were actually making her money. Now, there's a different form of scarcity, and this is the one a lot of entrepreneurs get involved in. Playing to win. Hustle, grind, and scale. More, bigger, better, faster, one day, someday. The playing to win is always looking at the future at the expense of today. I've been in both of these situations. I grew up playing not to lose. I had a car detailing business when I was 15 years old, and I made money with it. I won money with it, and I just didn't want to spend money. I actually was starving once when I was driving, and I saw one of those like little jerky stands on the side of the road, and I paid $7 for some jerky, and it took me months to get over that $7 loss because I ate the jerky and it was gone. That's how insane playing not to lose can be. I once had a brother-in-law. He was like, for Christmas, he just sent me all these Dave Ramsey books. It was like kind of as a joke. But I read this one that was like a bunch of letters to Dave, and he was responding. And there was this couple. They said, "We've taught all of your principles to our daughter, and now she won't spend any money at all." That's the playing not to lose mentality. Now, playing to win, I got into that in my 20s. I got into I got to prove I wasn't stupid. So I was like, I got to make a lot of money. I'm going to work so much, 7 days a week. I could never focus on anything. Like, I'm glad that my wife was patient and stayed with me because I wasn't a good husband. I wasn't a good father during that time. It was all about more at the expense of the things that mattered. And by the way, you can have plenty of money and have all those things. That's the lie in society. It's an either or. You don't get rewarded in society. Nobody gives you an award for being a family person, but that's the reward of life. But if it's always to sacrifice that, and that's the word people use, I'm sacrificing. The lie that people say all the time, entrepreneurs especially, I'm doing this for you. They didn't sign up to say, I never get to see you, but you put money in the bank account. That is trying to fill an unfillable void in ourselves. Maybe because we were told we were stupid as a kid, or we told ourselves we were stupid, and we thought money would prove that we were valuable. That's backwards. Money will follow your value. Be valuable. See, no amount of luck, saving, discipline, no amount of return or advisor, they're not going to be able to save you if you're in scarcity. How do you conquer scarcity? Well, be around people that are abundant. Instead of complain, add value. When you're struggling, have mentors and coaches that help support you so that you get beyond that mindset. Read. Watch this. Listen to this. Work on yourself. Grow yourself and your finances will follow. All right, the third thing here that's a problem with financial freedom is there's just a lack of financial knowledge. People take too much risk. When we grow our money and we don't grow ourselves, that gap is called risk. And most people don't do enough due diligence because they hear someone does well with something, so they go buy it when it's too late. They didn't understand it. They had no exit strategy. Well, how do I create an exit strategy? If I get into something, I know how to get out of it. That's not that valuable. Or they don't create cash flow along the way. Cash flow can help with abundance and freedom because the money's coming in. It creates that financial independence like I talked about. You want to create more abundance, create downside protection. Be a steward of your resources. What do I mean by steward? People win the lottery all the time. I mean, there's lotteries going on all the time. Most people just lose by participating in the lottery because it's just a tax on the poor or tax on the ignorance. Yeah, there's like these states that they raise funds for the government by doing a lottery. So they're profiting. They're not giving all the money back, and they're just saying, who's going to be the one that luckily draws this number? And guess what? If you draw the number, I don't know how lucky it is. Because now people go, you didn't earn that. We want some of it. long lost relatives come out of the woodworks, friends you haven't seen for years. Hey, will you fund this? Will you buy this? You're always the one at dinner. Everybody else has alligator arms. They got deep pockets, but too short of arms to grab it. Nobody can grab the check. Like, if you don't know how to go to the gym and lift 400 pounds, and you put 400 pounds, it will collapse you. And that's what happens. It collapses people when they get this kind of money because they're not stewards of it. You have to build up the financial muscle, the financial mindset to be able to handle that kind of a thing. Otherwise, it's fleeting and it goes away. So your knowledge matters. The team that you have around you matters. Their expertise matters. And it's a process through lifetime that you learn as it goes on. It's good to have outside perspective, right? It's good to have those mentors and coaches that help you out and you could learn from that have been there. But it's important for you to know your investor DNA. What kind of investor are you going to be? Don't let society tell you that, just give it to the Ivy League people. They're so smart. Like, would we trust Wall Street with anything else, but we're going to give them our money? Why? You're not getting on Wall Street Airlines. You're not getting surgery at Wall Street Hospital. They'll be like, lost a kidney. Oh, we sold it. That's what really happened. So the fourth issue here is accumulation. I talked about it. Wealth equals money times rate times time. Set it and forget it. It's too long of a time frame to know whether it's going to work out or not. The fifth issue is our shadow personas. I mentioned this at the beginning, but let me give you some description. In my book, Money Unmasked, you can take the quiz, or you can just go to garrettgunderson.com/tools, take the quiz for free, and figure out what's your shadow persona. There's one of four shadows. There's the miser, who plays a game called preservation, and they'll end up with money that they won't spend because they're afraid. Well, they're addicted to holding on to what they got, basically. So that's a miser. I grew up around a lot of misers and was a miser myself. And there's no enjoyment in it. I made my wife live in a crappy apartment, even though we had money for something better. And thankfully, this woman, Nancy, and I got in a conversation. Nancy was helping Kiyosaki with some stuff, and I had just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And she's like, I can't wait till you get to this upper echelon of people that are in these groups because you're going to find out, like, they just view money differently. I was in the play not to lose mindset of miser, and she could see that about me. I was like, what do you mean? She asked me a few questions, and my answer to some of those questions were, well, when we have $1 million, we consider having kids, and I don't want to move into a house until we have X number of, I could pay cash and all that. I just had this mindset that was like, we live so beyond frugal, miserly, and we fight about money all the time because I'm like, my wife was a teacher. I'm like, why are you spending money in your classroom? You're supposed to get paid to teach, not pay. Hey, why is our heating bill so? It's like just constantly picking at all these stupid things, just destroying love and enjoyment of some of the best time of our life because of my money persona, because of the shadow persona. And it wasn't helpful. Now, the next layer up, or another play not to lose, is the conservative. And I'm not talking politically. I'm talking about fiscally. They play a game called accumulation, and, well, they end up with money that they can't spend because they're afraid they're never going to have enough. See, conservatives, misers might not tell you their philosophy, but a conservative will judge you for not doing what they do. They're more likely to be in a diversified portfolio. They're not just putting money in a coffee can in the cellar. They're not just putting money in the mattress or in the bank. They're thinking about long-term retirement plans. But the reality is they're not really enjoying it along the way. It's always one day, someday. Again, play not to lose. Now, on the play to win side, there's two other shadow personas. One's a striver. They play a game called status. They could work harder to make more money, but they just inevitably burn out. Then there's the high roller. They play a game called opportunity. And they end up bankrupt a lot of times because they take on too much risk and cut corners. The things that lead to these shadow personas are scarcity. There's no financial freedom in the shadow personas. To go from that isolated mindset of scarcity and a flip to abundance, well, the miser becomes a mindful manager because they're in the game of collaboration and co-creation. They're instrumental for any organization that's looking to reduce waste and promote efficiency. But it's not just about their budget, it's about the value they bring to the world. Or the conservative becomes a planner, a stable, thoughtful, and strategic person. They're great at monitoring the effectiveness and efficiency of any initiative. But again, it's outward, it's serving others, it's solving problems. The striver becomes a creator, an artist, an inventor, an entrepreneur. They lead with innovation and ingenuity, and they add more value to the world. Or the high roller becomes a catalyst. I love catalysts. Catalysts are movers and shakers. They're visionaries. They're connectors. They think and play big and show us ways that we could all win together. But that comes from abundance, comes from freedom, mental freedom. So another issue to financial freedom, or something that harms it, is being in isolation. Identifying ourselves as whatever our mistakes are and being embarrassed and letting guilt and shame manage our money, manage our mindset. It limits our upside. We're too dependent on the grind and just working. It's very low leverage. Hard work, not smart work, to be overly cliched, but like some of the hardest work is vision. Some of the hardest work is developing skill sets. Some of the hardest work is being a better receiver to allow other people to support you as well. It's not being isolated and doing it on your own. There's so many money myths that are out there. That's the seventh issue that is really the problem from people being financially free, is they buy into those myths. I mentioned it takes money to make money. It's a myth. Killing sacred cows, that's one of the early myths. If you get this book, it'll absolutely help you identify and go deeper on what I'm talking about here. It talks about high risk equals high return, like I mentioned before. You're in it for the long haul. But it also goes into things like a penny saved is a penny earned. Love Benjamin Franklin. Great that he was frugal, but some people are penny pinching. They have blisters on their fingers. They miss dollars because they're paying attention to dimes. Or avoid debt like the plague. Most people don't even know what debt is. If we look at debt, it's just a balance sheet here. It's our assets versus our liabilities. Now, if I found a $500,000 asset, but due to distressed times, or they have to unload because they're moving or something, I buy that asset for $250,000, but I get a loan for $250,000. Most people would say I went $250,000 in debt, but I did the opposite. If I take $500,000 minus $250,000, that's a positive $250,000. I'm $250,000 in equity. Assets versus liabilities are either equity or debt. Definitely don't want debt, but debt, just because we borrow doesn't mean we're in debt. We might be in equity. Now, if I, on the other hand, found something that I'm like, ooh, this is awesome, but it's only worth $250,000, and I pay $500,000 because of the emotion, I'm now $250,000 in debt. Yeah, avoid debt, but know what debt is. There's another, and as I started with this one, the finite pie. That is the ultimate myth. Believe there's only so much to go around. Instead of exchange creates wealth. Instead of understanding a dollar doesn't die when I spend it, it keeps circulating. And the more it circulates, the more value is created, the more wealth is created. So how do you add more value to create more wealth? Part of this is on the 8th point here. Most people don't realize there's 3 measures of worth. There's 3 measures. The first one is where far too many people stop, especially in miser. The price, what you pay. If everything's about discounts and double coupons and all this, or just not doing it, because sometimes things can have a high price, but the second thing is cost, or the economics of it. There could be things with a high price and a low cost. The one that always comes to mind for me is a tax attorney. They might cost thousands of dollars an hour, but if they're saving you hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes, high price, low cost. But what it really comes down to is value. This is where financial freedom exists. Value is your feeling of satisfaction, your enjoyment. How do you feel about it? If we focus on value first, cost second, and price third, that's financial freedom. If we focus on price and price alone, there's never going to be that financial freedom. There's never going to be that peace of mind. See, you're not your money. You are not your money. Your self-worth is not your net worth. If it is, you're confused. It's going to damage your psyche. Money doesn't dictate your potential or determine your destiny. Value does. Purpose does. Fulfillment does. And money will follow that. Now, this is the one, maybe this next piece is a little bit more controversial. But budgeting. Budgeting is at odds with financial freedom. Budgeting is odds because it says, if we could reduce our expenses, we can have more money. But again, will we ever spend that money? Well, how do we enjoy that money? Like, even if you hear the word expense, does it feel empowering and exciting, or does it give you like that guttural feeling like, oh, expense, that's bad? Money could not be enjoyed without an expense. Can't be utilized, at least, more accurately. So your expense is someone else's income and vice versa. So if everybody reduces expenses, we reduce everybody's value. So I mentioned I'll talk about mindful cash management. Mindful cash management is we just start to focus on 4 things. Number 1, number 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 is remove anything that's a destructive expense. Number 2, pay cash for anything that is a lifestyle expense. Number 3, address our protective expenses, insurances, asset protection, corporate structure, and increase our productive expenses. So if once a week you just went and said, let me eliminate these, let me manage these, let me address these, and let me increase these, you're going to find you're going to have a lot more wealth and you're going to have more financial freedom. All you've got to do to mindful cash management is you pay yourself first, a percentage off the top in a sweep account. Just automatically have the bank sweep money when you make a deposit into what I call a wealth capture account. It could be a money market, it could be a savings account. It's a peace of mind fund. When that money's there, you have more peace of mind. So get that to 6 months. And then to do that, just go through and identify what type of expense is it. Don't spend more than you make. If you do that, you don't have to budget. Now, finally, the last piece I want to talk about, we have to eliminate this lowest common denominator. Lowest common denominator is kind of communistic. Okay, we have to have everybody lower their standards so that everyone's the same and nobody's doing more. And we have to say, hey, because this person doesn't make good financial decisions, we'll just give the advice that anyone, just automatically enroll in a 401k. Pay off the mortgage. Okay, that's fine. It's one-dimensional. Like, increase your knowledge. Become a better investor. Learn your investor DNA. Don't let low standards dictate your wealth. The government's not going to save you. Corporations can't save you. And we don't want schools to teach this. If schools start teaching finance, let me tell you this. A teacher's on a fixed income, and I've never met teachers working for the public school system that said, you know what, we're paid well. I only hear, and I have a lot of great family members that are phenomenal teachers, including multiple teachers of the year, say that they're underpaid. So if you're in a socialistic system where you're not paid based upon how productive you are, you're paid based upon, everybody's equal. Well, guess what happens? If they start teaching about money, they tell you that money's about effort. It's not. It's about value. They're telling you it's unfair. It's just that they don't know the rules. And now they're going to teach our kids about finance. Please don't let them teach them about finance because they're confused and they already have so much on their plate. They got to teach science and math, and they've got to deal with kids on phones, and they got to deal with all these policies, and there's just so much going on. They don't have the bandwidth or the skill set. If you're going to teach someone how to fly a plane, they better be a damn good pilot. Otherwise, it's not going to work. If you're going to pilot your money, this is your responsibility. There's nobody coming in to save you. You've got to do the work. You've got to learn. There's people that will support you, but not save you. You can't expect other people to care more about your money than you care yourself. So, financial freedom is a place of money not being the primary reason or excuse for doing or not doing something. Again, it's a consideration. It's just not the consideration. It's a state of mind, a state of being, a perspective. And most people aren't financially free because they chase net worth. They come from scarcity. They don't have financial intelligence. They're stuck in a shadow money persona, miser, conservative, striver, high roller. They start to feel isolated when it's not working. They don't want to share with people because guilt and shame starts to rule them. They're governed by philosophies they identified before their brain was formed in childhood. They buy into money myths that don't serve them. They confuse price and don't look at value, and they're stuck in budgeting, and they're peddled to a low common denominator saying, just let the professionals handle it. But it's a game of stewardship. So you're your greatest asset. Financial freedom is a state of being. It's more than money in an account. It's value. So what would money Jesus do? I don't know. I feel like looking like Jesus has its downsides. I mean, not really for me. Mostly for some of my friends and family. Look, I had a friend that after being on this earth for 28 years, he had done some serious soul searching, he said, and he decides to tell me that he's gay. Got quiet and awkward. I said the first thing that came to my mind. Have you ever masturbated to me? Okay, Jesus wouldn't have done that. That's the thing. All right, last thing here. What would Jesus really do? Let's just go to Matthew 25, verse 14 through 30. The parable of the talents. A master was going on a journey and entrusted his 3 servants with his wealth. He gave them these talents, a form of money, which is based on their abilities. The first servant received 5 talents and doubled them through wise investments. The second servant received 2 talents and also doubled them. The third servant received 1 talent, but out of fear, buried it in the ground instead of using it. When the master returned, he praised the first 2 servants for their faithfulness and rewarded them. However, he rebuked the third, and he said, with your laziness and fear, I'm going to take away this talent and give it to the servant with 10. Moral of the story, use your gifts, your resources, and your opportunities wisely. Playing not to lose out of fear leads to missed opportunities. Those who invest their talents will be rewarded, while those who hide them out of fear will lose even what they have. Know thyself. Don't make it about my will, but thy will.